Hi there, it's Alan Stockdale here from EscapeThePrisonMatrix.com, and today I've got a guest, a very special one, a guy that I came across only literally a week ago, but I was so blown away by the information what I heard and the in-depth knowledge on the subjects he's going to cover. I just had to get him on the show, and just as this universe does, it looks after us, and basically within a space of 3 hours, I talked to him on Facebook, got him booked in for a show, so I'm really, really pleased to have him on. His name's Gozaimasu Stone, and he covers a huge variety of subjects, but one of them is to do with basically the reality we live in, what it's all about in its rawest forms, in most in-depth detail. So I don't want to hold on anymore. I want to introduce him like I just have done and let him go for it. Are you there, Goz?
Yes, I am. How are you doing, Alan? Thanks very much for basically inviting me on the show. Yeah,
not a problem.
It's a good sort of Monday evening here. Yeah.
You go for it then, Goz. You start us off, Goz, on what the reality we live in.
Is there anything from... Well, okay. Just before I do, is there something in particular you might want to probe me on from the show, Michelle's show I was talking on with Lily the other day, that you might want to...
Yes, there is.
The direction.
There's one question I've got for you, what's been burning in my head, and I've not had an answer to it yet. And what it is I understand that we're living in a reality what's an illusion. And I believe, and I understand that it's in our own heads that what we're projecting this reality from the energy what's coming into us. But one question I have got is this reality something on the lines of like the Matrix, where you've got a human body somewhere in another dimension, or how does that work? How does this holographic universe work with an organic body? No. Hello, it just cut off then. Are you there?
Yeah, it did. Yes, it did. It just cut off on, you just went just one sort of, like you were getting up to the part of the question where you said a lot of this reality is an illusion and a lot of it's been controlled from inside the head, so to speak, and then it cut out after that, just the last part of your question.
Well, basically, I was just asking, what from my own personal point of view is the reality we live in. I understand it's an illusion. I understand it's in our head, what we're just sort of projecting this reality we live in. But have we got an organic body anywhere? Is it like the Matrix, where there's a body somewhere? Is it in a different dimension? Just explain to me, to the best of your knowledge, how the holographic universe, how does it work, if you can?
Okay. Okay. Well, you're exactly correct in saying that reality has been manipulated in a sense that you could say that the astral sort of hierarchy of entities that have basically been parasiting of the human body of energy for a long period of time now, and sort of directing its course and controlling it. They program matrix reality, so it does come only out of the head and nothing else. But the thing is that the present now reality is actually a reality that's sensed with all of our senses. It's not just the brain, so to speak. See, because what they've done is that they've created a whole fiction reality that's based on sort of like third-party information and a system of non-sense or sensual sort of language that basically you have to learn, that's artificial, that really has not much intuitive connection to the actual real present now world around you. And what's very symbolic of that, I can tell you straight up, is the fact that they had the John the Baptist's birthday on the 24th of June, which symbolises the cutting of the head off the rest of the body of humanity. Okay, because we all know the story of what happened to John the Baptist in the Bible. And that's what it symbolises, because what they want to do, the whole matrix is literally programmed on the mind. So they want you to focus on the mind. And the number of the matrix is number 9. I'll elaborate on why in a moment. And so that's what they want to do. And as long as we're sort of dependent on this external collectivism sort of reality outside of ourselves, of third party, basically intellectually bankrupt information. It's all information that basically we're taught what life is, and we have to believe that and be dependent on that rather than our whole bodies and through all of our senses and body organs and everything there. All the information on everything is within our whole genetic structure, right through from a physical to, you could say, like a quantum sort of reality level, as sort of science calls it. I like to call it the organic sort of internal source creation reality, as opposed to the light creation reality that's actually, or extended light creation reality that they basically manipulate the real now, organic reality, from the whole mind construct thing. So you could say that's it in a brief nutshell, what's actually going on in the sense here. And also 24th of June is actually right in the middle of the pagan calendar, also symbolising that, chopping in half. And the whole mind thing is basically run on the whole duality illusion construct. Now, why I say duality is an illusion is because duality, the whole positive and negative thing, okay, that's, and all electromagnetic energy, that's all astral energy, okay, and that's of light creation that comes after organic internal source creation. And the thing is that even on the astral levels, there's no such thing as positive and negative. It's all the same energy. And the thing is that how they basically use duality to control and manipulate is that when a man becomes divided within himself, everything becomes black and white, okay? Rather than looking at, any situation in its whole sense and for what it is and what it requires to sort of sort that situation out. And, on paper, it might be a basic term situation on one day, and then 2 days' time it might look like the same term situation, but there's a lot of situational variances from day to day and situation to situation that require different sort of remedies or solutions or sort of activations, to basically sort through, a certain activity getting done or a problem resolved. And so one thing that may have solved the problem for that seemingly same situation on the first day actually may not be the same solution on that next sort of situation, a couple of days later. So that's kind of, you could say, the basis of holistic thinking. But the thing is, getting back to duality, for that positive and negative sort of bipolar, dualistic sort of, you could say, energetic transference reality, illusion to actually occur, it actually requires 2 fixed points. The only fundamental problem with 2 fixed points is that, okay, while we're on Earth in our day-to-day life, it might seem that everything physical is in a fixed sort of point and we don't notice that we're actually moving. Okay, it's a relative thing, I'm sure, as to whether you're standing here on Earth and, experiencing, the gravitational effects here, and you're here now, as to the planet actually moving through space. And the thing is that what I'm getting to is that in every something is different, is fixed, nothing is absolute. So the constant motion of the universe actually makes the present reality actually what I would term as multipolar, not dualistic or bipolar. So that's the fundamental problem we have with the whole dualistic illusion, and you'll notice that sacred geometry in itself is based completely on that. And it's very close, but no cigar, sort of like a shadow copy of the real reality, okay? It's all mathematically sort of, worked out. But the thing is that there's always like a small, like when you look at the, say for instance, a royal mile measure, that's all very close, to the actual real sort of equation of what it equates to be, but it always just misses. It's the same with the piping. I think I was talking about on the show that it's always got a repeater, and the fact that, it never totally nails the whole equation, because this is the thing about the light creation, folks, is that they cannot copy, they cannot clone 100% what is an organic reality creation. So in a general long-winded but connected sense, I hope that all makes sense, what I just said then. That's the main key critical mass sort of difference between the duality, illusion reality, and the actual real reality that's actually a multipolar sort of reality. And that's why all these systems of mathematics and physics and everything that we have on the planet, it's very limited and incomplete, because it tends to deny the sort of the metaphysical and quantum, or metaphysical and or quantum sort of aspects of what's going on. And still today with system science, that was created by occultists anyway in the first place, they can measure what happens in a quantum reality by the effects of it, but they still don't understand how the core mechanics of the processes actually work. And that is something you can actually tap into, because in our anatomy ourselves, you could say on the nothingness, the actual, the organic internal source creation energy that everything comes from, you could say, beyond the atomic molecular structure that makes up everything, is actually like a pure consciousness that all life comes from. And literally, okay, they talk about how we're made up of DNA structure. Well, beneath the DNA structure, there's actually a biocell organic, energy, primordial creation source energy that everything is all made from. And we can tap into that. And despite the fact that our DNA, our genes and everything has been so manipulated and coded, and put into this whole matrix sort of time illusion construct, that you can actually override all of this by tapping into your own inherent center, which is like using all of your energy centers simultaneously and spontaneously all at once in the present now, rather than sort of, activating like a third eye meditation and sort of balancing it off with all your other energy centers / chakras. That keeps your focus on your mind. And the mind and the heart are basically, that's where they want you, because they keep you focused in the mind all the time. But the thing is that they want you to center in the heart. And the problem is that the heart is not the actual center. Okay, it doesn't, like even when you look on the physical anatomy of the human body, the human heart is tilted 23.4 degrees to the left. It's not even dead center. And the thing is, the heart, it's a very important function of our sort of energetic reality as into who we are. But the thing is, it's not the actual center of our being. The center of our being your soul, is actually using all of your whole body intelligence all at the same time, instinctually, as you need it in any present moment. If you're basically operating out of your mind, or put it this way, if you're sort of performing or doing a talk like this, or playing an instrument or playing sport, well, as soon as you think, you are no longer in the present moment. So if you're in your head for most of your life and not in the present now, well, it's, how they fundamentally get you straight away. And it's when you sort of exist centered, and grounded, as they say, earth, because the whole thing is that the earth here itself is of the same frequency of the creation source internal, or I should say the organic internal creation source energy. And the whole purpose of living here is to do organic regeneration, as in your soul, through this physical experience in separation. But the problem is that we've ended up with a whole heap of middlemen, hustlers, in the astral, in a certain part of our reality. It's just out of our blind spot. I should say rather, it's in the blind spot of our physical sort of viewing reality, between 3 and 4D. But the thing is that, yet again, with all these dimensions, and densities and stuff like that to our reality, that, you'll hear a lot of people talking about creation mechanics out there. Well, the thing is that once you connect to your inherent center, well, then you're accessing all levels all at once while you're in the present now, physically. And there's nothing more powerful than when you're in this living physical existence, which is an existence of separation, but you actually are consciously integrated and aware of the fact that, you are a part of creation source. The soul part of you is that. And the thing is that with your inherent center, it's like what's, psychologists refer to as your inner child, because that inner child is your creativity and creation itself, okay? That inner child, your inherent center, that's actually the child of the parent, or the parents, rather, which is the creation source, okay? So if you're consciously connected energetically to your inherent center, well, you're connected to all that is, It's the pure creation source, which is just pure consciousness. It's the primordial creation matter that makes up nothingness in equal 3D sort of sight. There's a lot in that nothingness just because we can't see it and comprehend it in our current sort of genetic, cognitive sort of state. That's the right way of terming it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's sort of like we measure the effects of a lot of things that we still don't know about, and if we did know about everything in a sort of intellectualized, detached third-party sense, like mind separate from, a whole sort of body intelligence, which is literally, what they call animal instinct. Now, that animal instinct is actually the smartest part of who we are. So does it not make sense that to actually map the consciousness of this unconscious realm as we know it, in this mind matrix sort of thing? Well, once you tap into there, it actually becomes a lot simpler, and you don't have to spend a long time thinking, because if you try to work out all of your life just in your mind, well, you're just going to bounce from one side to the other, and as we know about two-party politics and, the whole Hegelian dialectic and, how that two-party thing is used in a constant divide and conquer sort of compartmentalised sort of reality where no one can see the forest from the trees because everyone's stuck on this us versus them sort of thing, fighting against each other. We're really, left wing, right wing is all the same bird. Well, anyway, that's basically, how that duality is used in, a very manipulative way there. But the thing is, we don't need any of that. We don't need to bounce from mirror to mirror inside this constant labyrinth and bouncing from one pole of the duality to the other, from the negative to the positive. It's like, sure, there's always going to be good and bad in the sense of, what we experience as good and bad in the lives and the world we live in. But the thing is that it doesn't have to be used in such a sense that there's no absolute good, no absolute bad, in the whole general sense. In the sense that something that's bad one day might be actually the right solution for another day in another situation. And it's like having, say for instance, you've got worms in the soil in your garden, but having, worms in your kitchen, while you're trying to prepare a meal or something like that, well, then it's out of its natural placement, isn't it? So it's kind of a bit like that. A lot of our life in this kind of matrix reality we have, there's a lot of organic and inorganic sort of components all skewed and mashed up and mixed together. And over time, sometimes we as humans, because we're relying on all this external collectivism sort of information that's taught to us as the real reality, well, we either just take that on blindly and accept that, or we critically examine that for ourselves with our own experience and our own sort of lives from moment to moment, whether that's true or not, according to our experience. And then we have to also do the vicarious analysis of other third-party experience and other people's experience that are outside the realm of your experience, And you have to vicariously analyse all of that and balance it all up with your own experience and what you've learnt and know from that. So it's quite a process in sort of working out, you could say mapping the unconscious sort of realm consciously. But eventually it's something that we're all taught to do. Like, it's something that you can actually sense the difference of totally with your field. So it's the difference to sort of like thinking just with your brain, or try thinking your thought, actually feeling it with your whole body from within your bones. And that's when you could say, well, things start to open up much more as to what more possibilities are actually around in sort of determining, what's your real reality in front of you and what makes these things sort of work. So, there is a process you could there is a process that I use to actually access the centre, okay? And
that was going to be my next question, Goz. Exactly what you're saying to me now about how to access your centre, that's exactly the question I've got written down in front of me. So you must have picked that up with your knowing. So please carry on.
Okay, well, that's good. We're on the same page as the flow goes. I'm not trying to sound like a retarded hippie, but that's just the way it happens sometimes. But and I love being that when it happens anyway. So I've got a very ironic sense of humour at times. As much as I can be very serious in getting into some of this stuff, at the same time you've got to laugh at it all too to get through it. So,
Absolutely, yeah, totally.
Okay, accessing your centre. Okay, accessing your centre, when you're accessing your centre, as I said, you're connecting to your inner child, which is the creation, which is the child of the parent, which is the organic internal creation source. Now, as I said before, the earth is of that same frequency, of that nothingness, that basically makes up, everything comes from, that pure consciousness, where there's no entity hierarchy or anything like that. Everybody is equal. That's the fundamental difference there, by the way. And I think most of the great prophets on this planet that we know about in history and we're told stories about, it's sort of, it's all a big combined sort of a bit of literal and mixed with sort of spelled symbology and astrotheology and stuff like that. Well, all these sort of prophets and people from all the religions and spiritualities, well, the main ones were all teaching about how to gain your inner freedom by basically how to connect with the organic internal creation source yourself, and from there everybody knows the same stuff. Reality is completely transparent and everyone's equal. And once everyone realizes what's going on, and nothing needs to be written down. That's why there's not much of written history from a certain part in ancient times, because they didn't need to write anything down, because intuitively they were still hooked in that sense. It's only now that we've become more disconnected as a whole in that sort of sense when you're looking at the whole population. And so connecting with the earth is probably the first and simplest, easiest thing and grounding. Sort of like, well, all through history and stuff, they're always, carried in carts and they're on flying carpets and all sorts of things. But notice how they're never actually situated on the ground. And there's a reason for this. Because, most of these dudes are sort of, they're under the control of, the astral hierarchy. And actually further back in time, some of these astral hierarchy were actually hominid. They're actually physical themselves. And that's something that Lily goes quite into, in the sense of, the difference between when they were able to directly harvest, the organic frequency of the earth back in Atlantean times, and since the earth had it 23 3.4 degree tilt in what I estimate to be what we know as 56 BC. Okay, and the Earth actually had to do that tilt because certain beings, the dracos in particular, which there's two main varieties, the Shem and the Hathor, and there's a lot of other hybrids that come off all of that, but I'll get into that later. They basically tried to get into, well, they did get into, and then manipulate the actual, how the planetary mechanics work itself. And in order to sort of stop these buggers from sort of going beyond a certain point with all of that, the Earth actually created this tilt in order to stop them directly harvesting the planet. And this tilt basically put the Earth sort of like the physical Earth grid lines, you know, the acupuncture of the Earth, the actual sort of physical ones, tilted at this 23.4 degree thing away from zero, where basically the astral sort of grid remains from the Earth. And what they've been trying to do since that time is sort of merge back up that physical grid to the astral one so they can get stuff happening. And that's what all this hurrah that's going on, sort of their last kind of final ditch sort of thing with CERN. And they're actually, this is what they wanted to do. They wanted to recreate Atlantis and cause massive pole ship and destruction everywhere. And then once it's all done, they come back and have their dawn of a new day, as you see all over the sonic symbolry all through history. That's been the big grand master plan. And so that sun symbol you see everywhere. And
so could I just interrupt you there, Goz, just to simplify for some of my listeners who are not into the in depth as what me and you are. Basically, what you're saying is that the Earth tilted itself 23.5 degrees off to stop the astral beings carrying on with their harvesting, as you call it. And when you mean harvesting, you mean taking the energies from us and sort of feeding the cells, basically. So Mother Earth Gaia tilted herself off at this angle to stop these beings having a free-for-all, feeding off us constantly. And now, what's been happening over the past, let's say, 1,000 years, etc., they've been trying to realign the Earth back to zero so they can basically feed off us at will. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, 100% correct. And in addition to that, as well as harvesting off humans, okay, because the human body has 33% organic energy in it, okay, where the head, the actual pineal itself, is only 3.3% sort of organic. You see, you know, the rest in the astral is all inorganic stuff. That's what light creation is sort of all about. Once upon a time, the astral wasn't polluted in the way that it is, but these beings have worked out how to use this thing and take it over. And they literally transmuted themselves from mainly a physical hominid existence in Atlantean times to they've actually created their ghost in the machine, so to speak. They've become the ghosts in the machine in the sense of they sort of relocated their existence, being more of a sort of entity existence in that reality. Yes, they can become physical during certain, they can create physical manifestation of themselves as well, but this is how they've controlled everything, you know, from the shadows, you know, for such a long time from this particular period. And they managed to do this at the same time, around this 56 BC sort of event, as I call it, because that's what I've worked out to be. That's actually the confusion of the tons event, okay, when they used all this kind of Tesla-like sonar sort of blasting on the Earth. You know, they're using all the similar sort of technology back then as they're using now, sort of like we know with all the sort of the Tesla developed technology that basically taps into all the organic internal creation source energy, which is a lot cleaner than the electromagnetic sort of energy, and they transmute all of that energy into electromagnetic energy well. But they're actually using all of this stuff to basically manipulate the frequency and vibration of the Earth itself and all life on it, and hence all the geoengineering in combination with the chemtrails. And look, they've got a lot of stuff going on, you know, in that sort of regard. But this is the thing, you know, if you connect with your centre, you know, to the biocells beneath all the matrix coding, well, that's how you existentially sort of break free of it. And I've got I've got now. How I've come to find out this myself is that I've had a pretty extraordinary, ordinary life. Is the best way of putting it. And I've experienced a lot of things, from the deep, dark occults, and sort of having, been medically experimented on with occult applications, to having spells put on me, to this and that, and look, just all sorts of stuff that sounds absolutely ridiculous and sort of B grade sort of fiction, but that's how the Matrix has been constructed. That, let's face it, a lot of the fiction that we do see out there is actually real stuff, sort of hiding there. And basically, the way they use comedy is also to sort of pass it off as, keeping it as fiction and stuff. But yeah, the whole desensitization process. But getting back to that 56 BC event, yeah, they managed to achieve three big things on that 56 BC event. And one of them kind of went wrong on them, hence the Earth tilting itself, so they couldn't keep on harvesting, the Earth frequency from the Earth itself, because the Earth tilted itself at 23.4 degree, so that they couldn't harvest straight from the physical lines. They're trying to move those physical lines back in line with the astral lines so they can do it all again. And that's what they've been trying to do in this whole sort of 2012 onwards sort of, inverted commas, ascension sort of period, which is, it's just basically pure harvest. Understand the real energy going on. And they've been trying to realign that tilt, and they've failed dismally so far in order to sort of have an effect on the planetary timeline and the actual Earth's timeline itself, which is basically what's been happening since 2012 anyway. That the real significance of the end of the main calendar is the actual end of the astral timelines on Earth. Okay, all this positive, negative timeline stuff, that all the New Agers are saying, we've got to get off the negative timeline onto the positive timeline. Well, this is all the same stuff, but just split up in the duality within the whole light creation thing. So at the end of the day, they control both ends of it, in that sort of construct. But the thing is, in 2012, why the Mayan calendar ended is because it's the end of the astral timelines on Earth, and the Earth is actually coming back to its own timeline. My phone just clicked. As we were saying, cricket just got hit to 6 months. I'm just putting my headphones back in. My phone went for a bit of a spill there. So, but that's the thing. In that 56 sort of BC sort of event, well, things kind of went wrong for them when the Earth tilted like that. Like, they achieved, the confusion of the tongues thing. They also hardwired the Earth to this whole sort of fake tree of life, Fibonacci sort of thing, which is actually on the 23.4 degree tilt. That's what that whole sort of flower of life, sacred geometry, everything's based on all of that stuff, because that's where the Earth ended up. And it's like what they're trying to do is marry that with the astral timeline again, so they can basically, start the same nonsense they were doing all through sort of the Atlantean period, where basically most of the humans became the human slave underclass, while those beings were doing it all in the physical. It was all, as crazy as it seems, that is what was going on. And so connecting with your centre, another thing it allows you to do is actually, the more grounded that you get, like as I was saying, okay, you can do some simple things like, walking bare feet in the soil, and wearing shoes that, that can keep you grounded on the earth as well, with the right materials. Like, there's plenty of videos on YouTube, people have got that stuff happening and talking about that stuff you can look up, and it explains all of that. But what I do energetically, like I learnt the third eye meditation, about 20 years ago in the 90s. And it was pretty thorough stuff. And it was from, you could say, the oldest sort of Vedic sort of Indian traditions of doing all that sort of stuff. And there's still some very sound techniques there when it comes to sort of entity clearing and regression techniques. There's no problem with it. But what I found is that it's too much work all stuff. You know, it's like a constant lifetime. You know, if you want to become an amazing sort of high initiate Buddhist or Hindu person or this person or that, it's a long discipline of mind discipline all of your life, and you can achieve a lot with it. But the thing is that why do that when you can connect into all of your senses at once in the present moment and integrate that mind into the rest of that raw instinctual animal instinct as we know it, which is far smarter and it's far simpler in sort of determining and working out what's going on in front of you, and also seeing through the reality of things, especially as all organic, you know, sort of objects that are on Earth, you know, living life, whether it be a tree or a human or a rock, it all has sensory information contained to it that we can connect to with all of our senses. But when we have inorganic sort of fiction structures, well, that has no sensory information contained to it at all. So hence we've got to have all this sort of intellectually bankrupt third-party sort of structure of, you know, matrix sort of information to basically communicate and run a reality with using all this mind construct, you know, that's really disconnected with the present now for most of it, because the bottom line is that if intellectualism means nothing if it is not poignant to the isness of any moment. So that's the thing, you know. Intellectual stuff is valid, but if it's not poignant to the here and now, well then, you know, it's all, you know, it's all illusion until it's basically part of the present reality, isn't it? And it's like in determining what is going on in the present reality, well, we can't be stuck inside our heads all the time, because that's disconnecting the rest of our senses in being in this reality. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes sense to me. Like I said, I'm just going to try and simplify it a little bit for some of the listeners who are listening to this. So, going back to before this matrix was put upon us, if we can just think of it as we're living in a light illusion universe. That's what we created for ourselves to experience. Ourselves experiencing the universe, ourselves in a natural, organic way where our bodies worked and all these different senses, and we live basically this sort of, let's say, call it a paradise on Earth, let's say. And what's happened is these entities have come and they've superimposed a type of coded matrix onto us, what makes us only see things in a narrow bandwidth, let's say. So we only see what they're putting in front of us, i.e. all the symbolism, all the words, the power, the spells, all those things, the media, all the banking systems, all those things are there created just to make us see it in their version, what they want us to see it. And if we connect with the centre, i.e. connect with Gaia, Mother Earth, walk bare feet, know the answers instead of thinking the answers, that will then take us away from their matrix, and we can sort of step back and sort of see it from a higher perspective and see all the lies for what they are. So if that is the case, then I would say to the listeners, all you need to do really is carry on the journey, what you've got of learning, awakening to all the real realities. This is what I did, and I went through a transition from all the down-to-earth realities like the banking system, all those things were set up, and then the knowledge came to me where I became aware of the type of subject, what Gauze is talking about, and this then help you take you above that, and helps you to centre, and help you to see the reality. So basically, if people just carry on with the journey, Gauze, would you say that's the best thing they should do, really, to save themselves? Is that what you reckon?
Yeah, pretty much. And in also determining the present sort of reality in front of you, like from day to day we do certain sort of things and, you know, to sort of survive and run our lives and stuff. But the biggest thing I can to pique people's curiosity, as into, you know, want to get the thirst and the hunger to know, you know, what are the cogs to what's functioning in here. Well, when you look at, you've got to understand your oppressor, okay? And our oppressor are the elites, okay? And they're really just the surface generals for these astral mind parasites, you know, as I commonly refer them to. And so really, they've been given a whole structure to follow, really. And what they do is that they're just the shepherds, you know, of the sheep, so to speak. And in the end of the day, they get harvested as well, okay, because they're all astral tagged, okay? Now, for anyone that doesn't know what astral tag means, is when you have an astral entity that's basically parasiting, you know, that's tagged onto your body of human energy, okay? And it basically tricks your mind into doing certain behaviours and things like that that you believe is what you want. It's the best thing for you and the best thing to be doing. And they're kind of very clever in determining what are your strengths and weaknesses, and they basically use those things and quite often push you to excesses beyond what you normally would sort of do in your normal behaviour, and get you to do sort of unconscious behaviours at times that you think sometimes later on, well, what the heck was I thinking then? You know, why did I do that? And, you know, like a simple example is like in alcohol, you know, there's a reason why they call it spirits, okay? There's a lot of those nasty things hanging around, you know, just about in every pub you go to, you know, so it's like, and that's why when people have, you know, one too many, well, it's some people, you know, go into the red zone, as I call it. You know, the VU meter goes into the red and never goes back, and it's almost like they're literally getting possessed, you know, because their tank's so full of alcohol that basically, you know, these things can really sort of come into them and sort of influence them while they're in that state, okay? When someone is astral tagged, it's when basically they've had some, usually a sort of like a destroyed experience in their life. You know, they're in a sort of a low period. Both, it could be through poor health in combination with, you know, an emotional situation and dynamic or semantic dynamics that are going on in their life that are keeping them in a low ebb, low vibration. And once you're in a sort of a general sort of low feeling state, it's over a sustained period, well, that kind of opens up cracks in your sort of natural energetic sort of field. I'll just keep it at a simple explanation in saying that for now. And these things can get in and attach themselves to you. You know, they can attach themselves to your head, your heart. And, yeah, it's all on an unseen sort of level. Like, but there are psychic people out there that can see this sort of stuff. There's some people that are not attuned to it, but the whole thing about consciousness is becoming aware of, you know, of each layer of reality as it peels off the onion, so to speak. And so these elites who are astral tagged, well, they're basically sort of running the duality program through all the different religions, New Age, stuff like that. At the end of the day, it's all about harvesting, okay? Harvesting human energy to basically fool humans into, through the higher mind deception, okay, to basically living your life in a way that sacrifices your body for the sake of your mind. But really, at the end of the day, your whole body is not just, you know, useless, you know, sort of mechanical, organic function that's just supporting your mind and your heart. Your whole intelligence is your whole body. Like your body contains memories and information and all sorts of processes that our conscious minds, you know, for most of us, most of our lives wouldn't even have the foggiest that those things are actually going on and being maintained all the time. And so becoming conscious more of these things allows you choices in your everyday life and to be aware of all of the spells and the black magic used to basically manipulate the reality through the duality, to basically get people to give up their energy for the higher mind course. And they don't realise that basically they're just allowing, you know, their body and their energy to basically be harvested, you know, to send it, to project it all towards the astral where it all gets scooped up. Because that's the thing, they want you to constantly use and reinvest in their energy grid, okay, which is a bit like the second-hand car dealer's lot, okay. like, sure, it's energy, it works, but it's kind of like a dirty sort of electricity energy. It's not the clean energy, that comes from the, organic internal creation source. And the whole thing is that when you center, is that you have a direct connection, to that energy without having to pay the ferryman, so to speak, and you don't have to, have any soul contracts or anything like that. That's something maybe I'll go into a little bit later, the difference between firstborns and secondborns, as to whether someone's born from the organic creation source or they're actually been trapped by the light, so to speak.
Oh yes, could you definitely go in? Could you go into that subject now, Goz?
Oh yeah,
because that really does really relevant to some of the articles what I've written on my website. So if you just want to go into that now, it'd be great.
Okay. Now, what I've found out, and is my third-party information of what's my direct experience, and I have a way of connecting with it, my center, using my body as a pendulum. That I'll ask a question with my mind, and then with that question, I'll feel it with my whole body, literally from within my bones, and basically feel that question with all my senses, and use my body as a pendulum that either rocks forward or rocks back, that gives an affirmation or non-affirmation of that question. And so with this, you can actually find out anything, but there's a little bit of a drawback with this, is that if you're still in your mind and you ask the question while you're in your mind, well, you're going to get the opposite reading answer. So say, for instance, if I go, oh, the sky is pink, well, we very well know that the sky is sort of, bluish in colour, especially while we look at it during the day. And, well, we know that's not a right answer, but if I'm in my head, my body will actually rock forward and say that's the right answer, okay? But when I'm actually centred in my whole body intelligence, my body will actually rock back and say, no, that's a non-affirmation of that question, okay? So that's a very simple, basic question to sort of give an example of. But it's like anything. Once you spend time in the office mapping, consciously mapping this unconscious realm of all of your senses and your instinct, and starting to feel, the different sort of timbre, sort of what I call flavours of the experience of what you're feeling, well, then you start to get a clear idea of what's going on. And the more you do it, the better you get, to the point that it's something that can't be intellectualized. You intellectualize it afterwards just to analyze processes, but while you're experiencing and feeling it, and as information comes through, that is not an intellectual process at all. It's a complete, feel process, okay? It could go more in the realm of what we know as emotional IQ, okay? But it even goes beyond emotional IQ as far as I'm concerned, because emotional IQ is generally what sort of related with heart-related stuff, where when you feel, it's not just feeling with your heart as the centre. As I said, that's not the centre at all. The centre is actually all of your soul. Now, look at your nervous system. Your whole nervous system in your whole body, physically, is interconnected. Like all your muscles, all your soft tissue, everything, it's all interconnected. And the level of your kinesiology sort of awareness, like your whole body awareness in being able to determine actually what's going on with your body function, well, no one's really sort of taught this stuff or conditioned to sort of have a consciousness to sort of think and feel and act in this sort of way. And if we're taught all from kids, how to basically tap into our instinct, and they kind of knew that the Earth would be coming back to their timeline and that the veil would be lifting, and so they kind of had to make sure that humans are basically as docile and sort of as servile as possible, without questioning anything and totally distracted with nonsense, sort of fantasy, sort of land, sort of like Disneyland reality, B-grade Hollywood and real life reality, rather than focusing on the present and actually what's really going on and what we're actually doing here, our purpose in living this life, in actually doing this organic regeneration where we are conscious of who we are as organic eternal creation source, you know, the child of that with our inherent centre, you know, having a physical experience, separation. And so getting into the firstborns and secondborns, well, we do reincarnate, okay? And there's two types of reincarnation. When an earth soul, okay, actually reincarnates, okay, they reincarnate through the centre, okay, which is through the whole body, okay? With the secondborns, they were recycled through the astral, okay, and quite often programmed through the astral. They are recycled through the pineal gland. And one thing that many traditions have done for a long time on the planet, okay, that's very predominant with the Jewish sort of tradition, but also extends to other traditions as well, is the whole circumcision thing. And that's specifically done on this sort of energetic level. So basically, it keeps on creating a human sort of slave underclass of secondborns that continually get recycled through the astral and constantly get reprogrammed, as opposed to sort of like a firstborn that's basically an organic sort of earth soul that's basically, born through the centre. Now the thing is that once one achieves organic regeneration, whether they are from a different sort of genetic source than sort of the earth human source, but once they, through a human body experience, achieve organic regeneration, well, they too become an earth soul as well. And it's why in a lot of the New Age speak for years and years and years, you hear the whole thing, they say, you know, you're not of this earth, you know, so don't be of this earth while you're on it, you know, learn from it, but you're not of it. And that's one of the biggest deceptions there is, just like this as above, so below, because that's just astral programming, you know, that's just basically, you know, as above, as in the astral hierarchy and how things run up there, and the whole good versus evil sort of thing, you know, sort of mirage that's sort of played out in the astral that gets you thinking, oh, well, there's good beings and bad beings and all that sort of thing, but no one really realises it's all the same energy at the end of the day. And they're all forced into contracts into maintaining this, you know, life versus dark, good versus evil sort of, you know, duality illusion there. So that's the fundamental difference with the reincarnation thing that's going on there. And that's why, you know, there's a few fragments of truth that you find in some religious scriptures here and there, because you think to yourself, you know, if the king goes around and kills in the whole town and village all the firstborns, and if people are thinking, well, okay, in the literal sense, you think, well, that's the firstborn, you know, as in the family, you know, like the, you know, the eldest son or daughter. Most people think it's that. But when you look at it on a logical sense, why would you go around and or something like that, or the families? When you look at all those stories, I have a point here.
Goz, could you just repeat the last minute or so? I lost you for about a minute.
Oh, okay. From which particular point? If there was a point where it started to garble.
Oh, it's been cutting on and off for quite a while, to be quite truthful with you. I've been struggling to sort of pick up what you've been saying. So all the stuff about when you get into the firstborns and that sort of subject, it started to cut off quite a lot around about then.
Okay, I'll start that again. Okay, firstborns are the ones that basically reincarnate through the centre, okay, through the whole body, okay, and all of its senses, okay. Secondborns are ones that are reincarnated through the pineal, and they get recycled through the astral, okay, and in a lot of cases, you know, reprogrammed and constantly
Could you
programmed.
could you explain about the going through the tunnel as well, and how not to do that and why not to do that for the listeners, because that's really important as well.
Okay, let's look at it from a very fundamental level. Okay, white light. Is that really organic light? White pure light?
No.
Okay. Where do you see white light? Yeah. Okay. Now, we do see a white light at night time, okay? We see the reflection of light off the sun, off the moon, say for instance, or stars. And that's exactly what it is. It's inorganic light because it's basically like a shadow, reflection light. It's not the actual pure source, okay? And you look at the sun, say for instance, to our eyes, that's a golden light, isn't it? So to me, that's more of an organic thing. It's just like you look at the earth. Well, what's an organic colour there? Well, you look at the dirt, you know, that's kind of like a brownie colour. And so, you know, next time you think about golden brown, think of those two things, because they're two things that you can actually connect your whole body to and energy to really ground yourself in a major way. If you want to have a really deep centre activation. But the white light itself, okay, getting back to when you die, and a lot of people having near-death experiences and that are reported on, okay, you go down this tunnel and at the end of the tunnel there's all this white light and stuff like that. Well, that's the big trap. You don't need to go down there at all. And it's through there that basically, yeah, that's where you get recycled. That's the trap. And another thing is that if you get buried, that's a guarantee. You know, that's why all the royals, they all get buried. So they can keep on reincarnating in the same family lines all the time. And so, you know, the same astral entities can basically, you know, it's a much easier run business that way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did that kind of make sense there, Alan?
Yeah. It makes sense to me. Like I said, I mean, obviously, I'm aware of these subjects already, but I'm just trying to think of the guys out there. So basically, what we're saying to you all is, when you die, don't go to the light. Basically, stop away from the tunnel, because that'll take you back to the false reality in the astral, and then will get you. They'll just take you there, basically talk you into all the things you've done wrong in your life, and you need to go back to Earth and make up for it. All the bad karma, what you've done, you need to make up for that. And basically it's all a lie. It's all they want you to do is keep reincarnating over and over and over again. So they keep basically, you're like a battery to them, and you're the power what's feeding them. So what we're saying,
exactly
so what we're saying is, when you do die, do turn away from the light. If you see loved ones, that's all a lie too. It's not that your loved ones don't exist no more, far from it. It's just the fact that they will use this program to make it look like it's your mum, your dad, your sister, to bring you into it, to get you there, when really you just want to turn away from it and go to Earth, go to Gaia, think of the centre of the Earth, go through that process, and then get back to your organic, proper existence. Would you agree, Goz?
Yeah, very well put, actually. Spot on. Yeah, that's very correct. And something I added to something they do to ensure a second-born thing is the circumcision thing, okay? Because that sort of guarantees a lot of the time that basically it continues a whole cycle of second-borns all the time, because it actually gets into, well, I'll just say it for what it is for a start, is that it's, you know, look, you're born with everything that you need. Why do you have to chop anything off for a start, okay? Just from that fundamental thing, you know, like if, okay, sure, we've all been genetically hacked and mutated and stuff like that, but in our natural form of what's there in our architecture, it's like, why do you have to keep on cutting off something like that, and something in such a critical, key, important sort of part of like the male anatomy for a start? And sure, female circumcision happens as well. That's a pretty horrible sort of process as well. And the thing is that when it comes down to when a man makes love to a woman, well, there's this thing called the G-spot, and the actual hood of the penis actually has a very important function in stimulating that, okay? And without that hood, it sort of doesn't enable a man to fully with all of himself, with all of his soul, so to speak, make love properly to that woman. And it also, just by, you think about it, the psychological sort of things that it can do to certain people, certain men, from actually having the old fella sort of trimmed like that, and the type of sort of deviances, or should say dysfunctions, a man can get into from basically being wounded in that place. Now, I know that opens up a lot of controversial conjecture, what I'm talking about here, but this is what I found to be directly the case. And, to me, it's a very cruel way of just, the Dracos and the astral hierarchy of continuing a human slave underclass just because they've worked out, because of that one basic function or a few basic functions. Well, if you physically disenable them from being able to do that properly, well, to bring in at a
Hello, Goz. Are you there still? Can't hear you at all. No, apparently not. He's gone. Let's see if I can get him back. Hello?
That's going to bring in a first call from creation source,
Goz, you cut off there.
In a way, you could say.
You cut off there, mate. I lost you altogether. You went off and you had to redial back in. Basically, I got you from obviously doing the circumcision, that side of things, and then it sort of went off altogether. Anyway, never mind. I think we heard enough of that to understand exactly what you were saying.
Alan, Alan, that always happens when you hit these critical key things on such subjects. I've had it so many times on Skype and conversations with people or shows, whatever. It's just a common thing. It's quite funny, actually. It's like, thanks for the confirmation.
Confirmation that it's true. That's why they've cut you off, yeah.
Yes. So the thing is, just to finalise on what I was saying there, what was cut off, is that, when a man and woman probably make love together and, all their body parts are intact, as most people are, well, they're going to bring in a child, from the creation source, rather than, if it's an act of non-love, okay, if it's of, just pure lust or just, perverted, Draco consciousness,
Yep, I've got you.
Kind of, sexual sort of, dysfunction and deviancy, all that sort of thing. Well, it's going to bring in a recycled soul from the astral. And if you get into the stuff like Crowley's thelemic rites and things like that, well, then there's sex rituals that bring in specific programmed sort of astral entities into certain human bodies. This is how we get our Titos and our Hitlers and our Churchills and, and Stalins and stuff like that. And so there's actually quite a science to all of even this astral stuff, and to what's going on. And so, so it's important to know about these things because these are all very subtle yet deep understandings, yet they have very vast implications. Some of these things, they're very of critical key importance to understand these things, but they're very simple things to understand. And once the veil is lifted on things like this and the common sense of the situation is seen and felt and experienced by people, well, it just is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah. As far as the astral's concerned, then goes, could you sort of explain to the viewers as simple as you can?
Yes.
What these beings are, where did they come from? How could you explain that in a bigger sense?
Okay. Okay. This is going to sound nuts to some people, but you get that with the big gigs. Okay. The main controlling sort of astral entities, okay, that we're dealing with, okay, that were once main hominid physical sort of beings on this planet with us are what's known as the dracos, okay? And these are reptoids, okay? They're not pure reptilian, okay? That's, they come from a hybridization of pure reptilian and what we know as Anunnaki. But these Anunnaki, way back in the day in ancient times, were actually known as Magi. okay, and which is commonly referred to as like Hungarian people in today's day and age. But it actually comes from a much broader and deeper sort of meaning, because the actual Anunnaki as we know them, and that's just a term that means spaceman, you know, it doesn't actually define any particular race of beings. They had many, many different varieties of who they are, you know, they had ones, you know, that were like sort of bird people, they had dog people, they had even, you know, what we know as human-looking people that were basically red-haired, you know, white-skinned giants. And the thing is, but they had many, many different varieties of who they are. And what Majja means is the mug part means great or seed, okay? And the Ya means family. And that family means all peoples, okay? And it doesn't necessarily mean a white thing, doesn't mean a black thing, doesn't mean a brown thing. It covers the whole thing. And the thing is that these dracos were created in what we know as the Tower of Babel, okay? And that's a completely different incident that's been married together with the confusion of the tongues. They say the Tower of Babel sort of incident and the confusion of the tongue incident in the Bible are the same thing. Well, that's not true at all, okay? They're completely different separate incidents, and the confusion of the tongues happened much later down the line. But the Tower of Babel, that was actually an anti-gravity chamber, you know, sort of palace, whatever you want to call it, that was basically used for breeding. And basically speaking, that's where the dracos were created, where basically some people might be familiar out there with the whole Sumerian legacy of Enki and Enlil and the whole sort of creation myths behind, you know, what they've been revered as certain gods. But they were just beings, okay? But as over time, you know, the way things that get manipulated. Yes, thank you. Sorry. And basically speaking, you're looking at two brothers there, okay, of a certain King Anu, who was an Anunnaki, and Enki and his sister Ishtar, or known as Inanna, they were pure Anunnaki, okay? Where you had Enlil, well, he was the product of King Anu basically making him with a pure reptilian female, okay? And so literally Enlil was like the first Draco, and that's why he was so different in his way to Enki, as you hear in that part of the Sumerian, you know, text legends, you know, with what you hear from Zachariah Sitchin and other people. And might add that Zachariah Sitchin is, or was, an Illuminati shill. I can go into that, the hows and whys later. So there's a lot of disinformation coming from him, okay? And I don't think hardly anyone knows out there that Akshov was a Draco. And Dracos, what we know is the second Adams and Eves and third Adams and Eves, which are the Neanderthal Homo robustus, and the third Adams and Eves genetic sort of hybridization, which was the Homo erectus, and after that was the Homo sapiens, okay? And there was two Homo sapiens seedings, and the first Homo sapiens seeding was done by Enki and Ishtar, and it wasn't done, you know, for all the wrong reasons. It was actually done for the purpose of organic regeneration, and I'll get into that later, and because there were other races doing that before them, pure reptilian races on the earth doing that before the Anunnaki came. And Enlil, who actually did it, sort of copied the Homo sapiens, but making them into Draco human race lines for the process.
Important bits. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. Yeah, it just cut out. Yeah, I know. Okay, which point was I up to? And I'll just re-continue from that point.
Just the very last bit when you're talking about NL and Enki and that sort of aspects. Basically, you were saying that I got the bit with the Tower of Babel and all that side of things. But once again, Goz, I don't like to interrupt because I know by the time I've interrupted, it's like 20 seconds later on your side. But I'm having some real problems with the Skype. They really are cutting off a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. So So, what I'm trying to say to you is, do you want to cut this short and let me see if I can find for a later time a different way we can communicate? Because all this recording, I have to be honest with you, I've loved it, but it's been spoilt so much by the robotised voice of yourself, and then it's cutting off. They really are trying to stop us communicating, and I think we need to find a better medium to do it. Maybe try that Zoom, what Lily was talking about. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. But I think just for the purpose, the academic purpose of, I think we should put this out there still there, Alan, just to show people what happens when you talk about certain things, especially on Skype.
Yeah,
and when you look at the enterprise,
anyway,
and people out there who are very familiar with listening to Skype interviews, and you know, when people are talking about information of a certain nature, well, this stuff does happen all the time. So, you know, it's not like, there are people familiar with this thing, and especially the people that are really sort of hungry to get to the bottom line of things. Well, you know, they're not stupid anyway. They can read between the lines of what's going on anyway. You know, they're using more of their senses, so to speak. So, you know, but I will just quickly say that, okay, Enlil created the human, or the Draco human lines, which were specifically created as a human sort of slave underclass, you know, for energy harvesting purposes, okay? Human lines created in the genetics, mishmashed with 40% of the first Homo sapien lines. And what you'll find in history is a constant sort of pattern of these Draco human lines and their leaders and stuff basically hijacking the identity of these first Homo sapien sort of lines and their sort of whole affinity and identities as well, and taking it over and then reverse polarizing all their spirituality. So it has a reverse polarized dualistic sort of thing. So not only they're running duality, but they've actually flipped things backwards, back to front. Now, getting back to the creation of the Dracos, okay, these were created between the second and the third Adam and Eve's genetic sort of hybridizations. And the Seven Sisters of Pleiades myth tells the whole story of what happened. And basically Enlil, he basically sort of forced 6 different pure reptilian dragon race females into, you know, having sex with him, you know, and he just basically raped and pillaged them and, you know, had his big orgy of sorts doing all that sort of thing in the Tower of Babel. And he created 6 different types of Draco, main Draco. 3 types he created are known as the Shem, S-H-E-M, and the other 3 types are known as the Hathor, okay? Now, of the Shem, the best way to sort of determine them, okay, I'll just determine them now by skin colour, because some of them have got horns, some of them have got hair, some of them have got this, you know, there's all sorts of different features to these different Shem and Hathor varieties. But one thing about them is that you get these red skin, white skin, and green skin Dracos that are the Shem. And Shem generally have a characteristic of being these sort of big, they're like you see in the cartoons of your classic sort of, you know, go and look on the internet what a green Draco looks like, you know, and that's pretty much your Shem Draco, even you see in cartoons and all that sort of thing, you know. You look at the ones that have got the horns in history, like Akhenaten and Moses, you know, same character. He was a Shem Draco. Thoth was a Draco. There was lots of them. Now, then you get in the Hathors. Oh, and the thing is about the Shems, they also have these big proboscises. They've got big noses, generally speaking. That seems to be quite a distinguishing sort of characteristic of them as well. Now, with the Hathors, they're more tall, brown skin and slender, And they've got pointy stuff. Like reptiles, sort of, some of them have even got sort of dog heads, some of them. There's lots of different hybrids that come off these main Shem and Hathor 6 forms. Now you're probably wondering, well, what's the 7th one? Well, the 7th one that got created, that was like an orange-skinned Draco, but they actually got phased out a long time ago, and I need to probe further to find out more information. But on a human level, if you look at the Mongols, they were kind of like originally an orange-skinned race, okay? And they were kind of created from the same genetics, but on a human level, because that came from the Chinese mixing with Red Indians from America, and that created the whole Mongol sort of thing. And so you've got basically red skin with yellow skin creating orange skin, okay, just putting it in its most, basic sort of sense. So that's pretty much how the Dracos were actually created. And then what they did was they went and colonised Mars. They colonised a planet that used to be between Jupiter and Mars that's known as Maldek or Tiamat or even Lucifer itself, because Maldek Tiamat actually got the Lucifer energy that used to be a female energy in Sumerian Magyar affinity, actually got changed over to a male Luciferian energy that's in the astrotheology of the Bible that energetically points towards Maldek and its moon Melona, and that moon Melona is also known as Lilith. Okay, so as to how that came to being, well, I guess that sort of taps into a whole different story in the sense of, well, not a whole different story, but just a later part of, a long way down the track from the Draco's creation, is that you get what happened before this planet Maldek blew up. Basically, there was a ship of these Draco-created humans that were on Maldek and had a civilization that went to a pretty high technological sort of stage before it's kind of self-imploded on itself. The Shem were actually the ones on Mars, and the Hathor were in control of Maldek, and the two used to fight each other all the time. They're always fighting over, basically harvesting, fighting over the humans, fighting over the earth, it's all energy wars really at the end of the day. And so that's what was going predominantly for most of Atlantean times. It was just this constant war between different sort of factions of Dracos and other people that are trying to sort of defeat Draco, sort of not be part of any of that at all. And basically you could say humans copped it back in those times. But before then you had Lemurian times, which was a bit of a different story going on there. But I won't sort of stray too far off there. So the Dracos colonised Mars, Maldek, okay? And then they also colonised Sirius, okay? The Shem colonised Sirius A. The Hathor colonised Sirius B. They also colonised Orion. They colonised Pleiades. A lot of people think, there's a lot of Pleiadian origins on Earth and all this sort of thing. Well, that's a heap of bunk, because all the beings in the Pleiades are all these hybrids that were created from Draco colonisation, and they've got nothing to do with literal human origins on the planet, okay? See, and this is the big deception. They try to get you to think the human origins are from all these sort of places, from these different ETs, where all these different ETs really are just all these Dracos and hybrids of Dracos, that you'll see in the New Age and New Age community. A lot of a great example is the Sirius B blue beings. Well, not a lot of people realise that they're actually Draco hybrids. They're not a different entity of ET, or whatever you want to call it, a being or whatever. And so this is one of the biggest deceptions out there. It's the same with the whole Billy Maya thing. Maya. He was supposed to be in direct contacts with Pleiadians and that. Well, that was all a very clever Draco front as well, okay, because these Pleiadians are really Dracos and Draco hybrids, okay, posing as other beings. Another great example was Maria Auxik of the Theosophical Society when she was channeling all these beings supposedly from the Aldebaran star system, but really she was channeling Dracos. She wasn't channeling Aldebarans because Aldebaran is where the original reptilian races that are here on the planet that were doing organic regeneration before the Anunnaki come along, okay, and the Anunnaki themselves, the Mudja, they both come from Aldebaran in the first place. And, you know, the Dracos and the elites have been very clever in making people think that the actual German white race, okay, Aryan race, actually come from Aldebaran. Well, that's not true at all. They were created by black shamans under Hathor control in Atlantean times, okay? And why it connects to the inner earth thing, because the inner earth sort of beings are all kind of Draco related too, and all part of that whole sort of German Nordic human sort of line that was created by these Hathor Dracos in Atlantean times. But the original Aryans on this planet before, like the original white race that came later after the Australian Aborigines, okay, I shouldn't call them Aborigines because they're actually Origines, because they're the first human form on the planet. And that's what we know of as the Cro-Magnon. Now, completely different to the Homo erectus and the Homo sapiens later on, okay, because they didn't even need to talk. They used to communicate telepathically, you know, internally, you know, from centre to centre, you know, just by pure instinct, you know, talking communication was introduced later, much down the line, with all the Anunnaki Mudja sort of hybridizations, because it was a little bit more complex for them to be able to do it. It's a bit much to go into now for the real reasons, but, you know, once the Dracos sort of got control, well then, you know, humans were always just treated as a slave underclass for the sake of, you know, Draco imperialism, you could say, in hegemony, you know, and using humans as a slave underclass for their harvesting purposes so they can keep their inorganic light creation reality going, you know, and extended. And this is where they're failing really badly at the moment, because they can't get the earth grids back in line with the astral grids. And so, and this is what Lily talks about a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. As you're talking about these Dracos and how they was made, and the original question was, who are the gods on the demigods, whatever you want to call them, in the astral realms? So are you saying that these entities were then created on Earth and then in a physical manifestation? How does just so people in the audiences can get wrap their heads around it? When you talk about the astral, you talk about something what's out of our perception, what we see on Earth. So how do they go from being a physical on Earth type of being to running the astral realms? Do you know how that works?
Well, basically these Dracos, you know, the whole thing is the pure reptilians and Anunnaki were very, very gifted, you know, in many sort of intelligent sort of sense sort of ways. And like, as I was saying, the first human beings on the planet, which are the Australian Aborigines, the Cro-Magnons, well, they were created by what's called the Patal race, okay? And they were a pure reptilian dragon race. And for them to basically experience organic regeneration again, they needed to basically create a human form in order to do that. So they created those first Cro-Magnons, and they did it for all the right reasons, and they were doing organic regeneration here. And even they, sure, they were all serpent races and, you know, reptilian races, but this is the problem with, you know, unfortunately with guys like what David Icke's done, is that by all means he's pointing out the right thing, that, you know, something's not, you know, something's rotten in the state of Denmark when it comes to these, you know, bloodlines and the way these royal families behave, and, you know, Rothschilds and all the rest of them. Because, yeah, they're all Draco tagged. But the thing is that, yeah, some of the genetics on the planet, even human genetics, have been played with over time too. Like, there's some horrendous, you know, sort of genetic sort of hybridization going on in humans and animals, you know, in Atlantean times that the Dracos did. You know, there was nothing that they didn't check out, if you know what I'm saying. And so these beings were initially sort of physical. Now, since the Earth has tilted, okay, it stops them from directly harvesting from the astral. Now, the thing is, with these beings, they are masters of the mind, okay? They're very, very good at what they do with the mind. But it is a complete, paranoid, fear-based existence. Like, they already think that they're perfect, okay? Because in the astral, they're androgynous. There's no male or female, positive or negative or anything like that. So they think, they think they're all that. They try to give you the programming that everything got created from this light creation in the astral, which is absolute bollocks, And this is the thing. They're teaching everyone, the creation mechanics totally arse about face. That's why they want it to be as above, so below, so below on the human physical level, as above on this astral sort of hierarchical level. But the thing is that from creation source, well, they're just genetic manipulators at the end of the day. And even when they were physical, they weren't gods, okay, in the sense of they weren't the creation source. Because creation source, everyone's equal. It's just pure consciousness and there's no entity hierarchy, okay, even in its pure state. That's what it is, It's primordial creation in its rawest organic sense. Now, how can something of form be the God of all creation, where the actual organic creation source is formless? It's even hard in this duality spelled speak English in a Romanized language to even describe the nature of something that's so formless and, in such sort of limited expression as we have with our spoken communication language sort of tools that we have here. And the thing is that these beings were always sort of one with, one with the astral. So these beings, and, people have heard of shapeshifters and stuff like that. Well, these beings were able to do that. They were able to manifest from one form to another because they've learned how to do it from, a mind-disciplined way of being. And look, this is very difficult for your average human, sort of, you grow up with a pretty simple existence. You go to church, you go to school, you watch TV, you do this, you do that. Your whole life's planned and laid out for you, and you don't really have to do a thing, really, and you don't really have to think for yourself. That's how this matrix has sort of been built. But when you endeavour to find out the reasons for why certain things exist, and then you have certain experiences that are not in the normal sort of mainstream garden variety paradigm sense, well, it's kind of like you're called crazy. And then when you're getting our whole medical and science infrastructure, it's designed by sorcerers, okay, who are the top of the hierarchy on Earth. They're the ones with all the intellectual information. They're the ones that know how to do, all the spells and the magic. And, they're the ones that shape the reality from the top, who are basically, in total cahoots, with these, and quite a lot of the time they're either astral tagged or their actual soul themselves is someone from the astral hierarchy, basically operating through that human body, okay? It can be either or in that sort of case. You either can be tagged by someone very high in the hierarchy, being an elite like that, especially if you're an elite that's sort of running the show sort of guy, or literally, it's actually one of the high astral hierarchy that's basically been sexual ritualed, into, a certain human body, so that sort of astral sort of being can basically totally operate that human vessel, and achieve certain things. So, and the 56 BC incident is the incident that really sort of, even I'm still working out some of the aspects of how they did this and understanding their consciousness enough and have an empathetic understanding so I can understand a bit more, so I can explain things a bit more simple, so your average everyday person can sort of get this, understood in a simple way. And it's like any of this information. Initially it comes as very complex because it's learned as like a mind construct. And so the fact is that once you basically unlearn what you've learnt as intellectual information and you bring it back to intuition, well, then it becomes much simpler in knowing it. You don't have to think about it every time to know it because you know it by your instinct. When you know it by your instinct, you can stay in the now and not even worry about it. So this is the thing. Reality has been turned upside down. We've been when we work on in the mind construct to tap intelligence, well, our intuition works against us. It works in reverse. We've been genetically hacked in that sense, you know, the mind, the heart, the whole everything. But the great thing is that when you connect all your body senses, your center, that just overrides the whole thing. And that keeps you grounded. That keeps you in the now. That's the best protection you can use. Like, you don't need any of this silly Merkaba mechanics and all this sort of thing. And like, yeah, sure, it's some very useful tools there and some very good protection tools. But once you're grounded with the organic energy, these astral mites, because they're so inorganic, they don't want to come near you. They get suffocated by the organic energy, you know. So, you know, and then when you get all these silly Mason sorcerers and stuff like that, you know, casting spells on you and stuff like that, all the spells start bouncing off you, and guess where they end up? You know, straight back to sender. So, you know, the thing is, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to get across here is that, yeah, life is meant to be simple, you know, in the sense of living a life of organic regeneration. And we're not meant to have this sustained sort of suffering and misery as the mainstay in order to get to an enlightened state of conscious understanding. You can get there through joy as well. But the thing is that when it's a constant suffering sort of thing, it's sort of, that's going to destroy your human vessel, you know, if you just constantly sort of, you know, getting to the pearls of wisdom, you know, either from the deep bowels of your consciousness or, you know, you know, other parts of your consciousness. It's all on that edge of experience, you know. And this is the thing, and you notice that through a lot of these spiritual modalities we have on the planet that are all Draco controlled, it's always through suffering that one gains, you know, and this is how they've tightly controlled it and got the programming down for so long. That this centering information hasn't been around, and every time, you know, you get one of these amazing sort of prophets or someone, I shouldn't call it a prophet, but just someone who's basically an earth soul, who's basically, you know, telling people, well, all you got to do is just connect with the true God inside you, which is actually the creation source, which is not even a form God. It's a formless consciousness where all life comes from. And you can ask it questions. You can basically find out all the information from there. And as long as you're conscious of it and you're mentally and emotionally balanced in a certain way, being able to see life in an objective way, so you don't have to engage in all the distractions and well, I should say, not so much engage, but engage in such a reactive way that it distracts you away from your main purpose of what you're meant to be doing, and like your own focus. And once you're mentally and emotionally unbalanced, well, then that's when you can be Pied Pipered, you know. And then if you're living physically in a way, if you look after your physical body in a way that you're actually eating real earth food, you know, if you can get your hands on it these days, and what's more important than food is actually the mineral byproducts that come off the food. Food's only 2% of the body's requirements. It's actually all the minerals and all, you know, stuff like that comes off the byproducts of the organic food. That's the stuff that our bodies, our minds and all of our senses really need. And so, and because our soil has been so depleted, you know, of these basic sort of minerals like magnesium and, you know, and you could say that the correct potassiums, you know, the salts and all the correct oils, and, you know, there's lots of things, you know, it's organic zeolite, there's lots of these, you know, good things that you can be putting in your body, like borax. My goodness, it's a cleaning agent, but if you actually go and research what borax is and what it can do, and if you're on an organic level with your body from day to day, it's quite astounding. And so if you know, in sort of balanced symbiosis, if mentally, emotionally and physically you're living a simple sort of as much as possible, you know, being stoic in the times you live in, it's very challenging. But if you can go as organic as and all natural as possible, well, life is meant to be simple in that way. And it doesn't mean just because you're living simply that you're not going to understand very deep and profound stuff. Quite the opposite. You're actually going to expansify and understand more, because all of your senses and intelligence is working spontaneously and simultaneously at the same time. So you are going to have a much deeper insight into all life that, or for a start, that's organic, and even that's not organic, because you can detect it, because inorganic stuff can't be properly sensed. It can be manipulated, but it can't be sensed from an organic. It doesn't contain information, like when we're talking about physical organic sort of objects like animals and humans and rocks and whatever that's natural to the planet.
Awesome. Right, I think we've got probably about 20 minutes left-ish, something like that goes. Just to cut on.
So I don't know if I've fully answered your question there, in a simplified... Yeah.
Yeah, you have. You've answered my question pretty well. Yeah, obviously it's an extremely complex subject, very in depth, and I think basically what we're trying to say to people out there is eat organic, center yourself to the earth, Gaia. Do all the things more natural. I personally drink distilled water. I think that's a really good way to flush out your system and get rid of the inorganic minerals what you don't need, and stuff like that. I think if you just keep searching for the information like I am doing on my journey, like we all are, what's listening to this show, I think that's the way to go. And what I was going to say to you, Ghost, to finish off the last segment of the show is I wanted to finish on a positive light as possible. What do you think the future holds for us? Do you think that us as a consciousness, we're going to get back to source? We're going to regenerate through Gaia and return back to source, or what? I mean, what's your personal view on that?
Okay, I do have a proactive plan and solution here. Because, there's a lot of doom and gloom you can talk about in the real reality around us and the true reality of our surroundings. But, look, even despite all of that, life is still good. I've stared death in the face a few times. I've gone through quite a surreal experience, one that I'm still...
Hello, can you hear me? Gauze, you cut off again about a minute ago. Just when you just started to say I'm still having such a surreal experience, and then it went.
Look, that in itself... Sorry, I've just got to fix these headphones, sorry.
We are experiencing technical difficulties. Yes.
For a moment, so I know I'm actually...
Yeah, I can hear you, Gauze. I can hear you. No problem. Can you hear me?
Yep. Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Please work.
So once again, we get to the really good information, and it goes off. Hello. It's just making a funny now, Gauze. I can't hear you at all. Hello, you still there? No, it's saying you've got a problem with the internet connection. In other words, I don't want you to talk about what you're trying to talk about. Still not working.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you now. Yeah, it stopped.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. I can hear you now, girls. Yes, carry on talking to me.
Okay, I've managed to override it.
Wow, that was some serious interference.
Yeah, what I'm going to do is that, look, I've started to show a few people.
You've gone again, mate. Can't hear you.
Yeah, it certainly was. And, look, I'm just used to having to be persistent and sort of getting... Oh, crap.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you, mate.
Changed on the speakerphone. Can you hear me again?
I can still hear you, yes. Carry on what you were saying. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I've started to show quite a few people around me that have been doing energy work themselves for a while, and, studying stuff for years of all sorts of different topics and things that are all interconnected and related. And I've started to show them how to center and do the pendulum sort of thing with your body, the rock forward, rock backwards, when you sort of, ask yourself questions and sort of feel those questions with your whole body, and literally it's your whole body intelligence giving you an answer back by giving an affirmation or a non-affirmation, a rock forward, a rock backwards to the questions. Now, I know that as soon as 50 to 100 people are all doing this themselves, and they're doing it to a certain level, and they're pulling this information out of themselves, essentially from their inherent center, from the creation source, and they're all pulling the same answers, and they're all doing it proper in their center, and, they know the difference between, when you're in your mind and when you're in your whole body. And they're starting to sort of get their own results, and they're starting to say all the same information, everyone's coming up with the same information. Well, that's going to be the matrix virus, and it's going to catch on like wildfire. And that's some very positive news. But it's like anything, people have got to have a hunger for it. Look at it, all the technology that we have out there, even if you, forget the Draco talk, forget all the ET talk, whatever talk, all the crazy talk. Just on a human level, look at all the technology out there and all the machines and things we have. Well, all of that came from humans, okay, pretty much. Like whether it was astral influenced or assisted by this, that, the other, that's not the thing here. It all comes out of humans. And what I'm getting at, what I'm driving at here, is it's humans and the actual whole human form itself on every level. It's the best technology around. So it kind of makes sense that if you understand the human form and its energetics and the mechanics to its energetics and creation mechanics, and you learn how to use those energetics in that way, as we're not taught at all in the matrix to how to use and have no focus on at all, well, that makes us very powerful beings. So powerful to the point that we don't live our lives in a way as slaves, because, everyone knows what everything is. Everything becomes transparent, and the only way humans end up sort of disempowered and ignorant and as slaves is basically when you have a group of people or group of entities or beings that basically disempower them by getting them to search for information outside of themselves instead of relying on themselves and having that self-belief in your center, which is the child of the creation source anyway. That's all you need. That's where the best information comes from. And when this information, and over a progressive long period of time, and the instructions, external collectivism instructions that's meant to give you the instructions to lead you to the places inside yourself where you already know this stuff. And basically, once you get to certain places, you just do it all for yourself. And you learn yourself because you are the student and you are the teacher. And just as much as you are the treatment and you are the cure for any disease that happens to your body, you can actually heal yourself. And the most important thing is to keep in mental and emotional balance. And once you're in a mental and emotional balance, well, then the medical industry the pharmaceutical industry goes, out of business. So there's a lot of simple cures here to fixing our planet up in the way we live and not living in this constant sort of economic slavery, by literally learning more about ourselves and what our potential functions are, especially when you're looking at it from an energetic sense, because really, as I said earlier, divide and conquer starts on an energetic level. It starts on a level of consciousness. So really, it makes sense, to all of your senses, that once you know the roots of what's going on in your reality, from a consciousness, sense, well, then you're learning it from the roots, because everything does come from the consciousness that is the organic internal creation source. Nothing further to add. at this station.
I think actually, mate, that's an excellent place to finish. Really, I think I think people listening to this through this fragmented broadcast, what we've done, I'm sure the people that are meant to hear this information have actually can piece together what we've been saying and realise that the reason why we've had such interference is the fact that this information is really good, and they're trying to stop the information getting out there. So, but anybody listening to this, please forgive the quality of this recordings, but hey-oh, that's the price you pay when you're speaking the truth, basically. So, at this point then, Goz, I'd like to thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing what you have done.
And just...
Yep, go on.
Yeah, and one last thing I want to say. Look, I want to thank you very much too, Alan. It's been lovely sort of meeting up with you like this and discussing these things, and you've asked some really good questions and supplied some great information yourself in your understanding of what's going on, in my honest opinion. But one thing that's very, very important is that the whole thing about this information is that I'm not out there trying to be some sort of guru or some sort of anybody in particular. You know, I'm just whoever, you know. And the main point is that you are your own guru. You know, if it comes down to like that, you don't need to rely on having these people to look at the saviours. Like, you are your own saviour. Only you can save you. Only you can heal you. And you have to face your own consciousness, who you are. Because until you experience that and you go through stuff, because there's an old saying, in order to get to it, you've got to go through it. And unless you go through stuff, and if you remain most of your life sort of distracted by this sort of pre-planned script, sort of Hollywood and real life reality that's been all laid out for you, well, you know, you've got to ask yourself, well, what are you getting out of life at the end of it, when basically all of a sudden you come back down to that calm still and there's no distractions going on anymore that you can ping pong from one to another. You've got to face yourself, and that's for most people that are fully programmed in the matrix. And I'm not saying this in a judgmental sense. It's, you know, it's just what is, until one decides to sort of consciously start questioning things and sort of having enough trust in yourself to believe in your own critical examining skills and your own experience and sort of balancing and lining up stuff. And so that's the thing. It's the whole point of accessing your center here is to get this information through your own direct experience. And until you have that own direct experience, there's no way until you can't comment on this until you basically experience it and knowing it, because it's beyond sort of gesticulating about, beyond conjecture, but beyond intellectuality. Because once you have information flow through you in this sense, you can have so much information flow through you in a blink of an eye. And I'm sure some people can relate to this as I'm talking about it, because there's a lot of people out there who are very natural people and very centered in their natural sense, but they're just not conscious of it. Okay? You know, sure there are a few people out there who've got their own way of doing it and it works within their own realm, but that's the whole thing, you know. You can work it out through your own uniqueness, through who you are. And that's the thing. You don't need any gurus. You don't need anything. The whole point is that you just learn how to do this for yourself. You use these techniques to access the parts of yourself that then away you go. You're off by yourself as you're meant to be. So that's the best thing there. And the real thing within this matrix, the love amongst the living, brotherly and sisterly sense, or more of the real reality we have. And, you know, and without trying to sound like cliched or cheesy in any sort of sense, well, love is all there is in that sort of sense, is because, you know, it's true that, you know, the love that you take is equal to the love that you make. And so that's the only thing that's really there, you know, like all the physical stuff and everything like that at the end of the day, that's all changing. That's never permanent, you know. It's something might be permanent in front of you, a physical building all your life, but, you know, it's not going to remain there thousands of years, you know. Like, so everything's all changing, but the only thing that doesn't change is the pure consciousness. It's the creation source, and basically how that keeps itself alive is keeping the love amongst the living, especially when we're in separated physical form as we are. And so that's it. You know, this information, like, I find it hard to even, you know, earn money from it, because it's your own birthright to know this stuff. It's your own manual. It's how to access, you know, that which is you. So, yeah, I just thought I'd put that at the end, you know, because, you know, this isn't about ego. This isn't about sort of gurus or anything like that. It isn't about money making. It's about literally finding the richness, you know, inside yourself. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
it really is there. Because, you know, you realise how superfluous so many things are in the matrix. You know, and there's so many things in the matrix that I have no interest in the sense of I don't want to give myself being a head up, being a multi-millionaire, you know, having to have this headache every day as I constantly keep under control and organise my whole business structure in order to have all this junk around me. Sure, it can give you a better passage and quality of life from A to B, but really you are everywhere all at once anyway, you know, even in this form, you know. You know, that's another topic for a whole other show, but it's sort of like,
it certainly is.
So anyway, I better leave it with you on that note there, Alan, and thank you very much. It was maybe a little bit long-winded and not getting back to certain points today, but to conclusively tie up on some things, but there should be enough there, and perhaps on another occasion I can basically, solve to continue on some of those things that you might have first heard me speak there on Michelle's show. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much there, Alan.
Thank you very much for coming on. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Like I said to everybody listening to this, thank you for getting to the end and listening to it through all this fragmentation. Now I've got to go and start editing all these little bits of recordings and put them together, so that's me busy for the next 12 hours. So, all right, Goz, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate, and I'll speak to you soon. Okay.
Thanks very kindly there,